All right, welcome everyone to another episode of Sasquatch Watch Radio. Today is December 2nd, 2024. The year is almost up. Can y'all believe it? Seems, I swear, the older I get, the more time flies. All right, we got a great guest. Before we bring our guest on, let's get our co-host in here, Gary Kendrick. How you doing, Gary?
Hey, Billy. Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing tonight?
Hopefully everybody's good. We got some folks in the chat already chatting it up.
Excellent.
Which is all good. I tell you, we've had nothing but some compliments, though, on our guests tonight. So
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Sasquatch Crew says, you got a great researcher and investigator. There you go. Look at that. Look at that. So without further ado, let's bring him in here. Thomas Steenburg, how you doing tonight? You're not doing one of those tricks, are you?
No, I'm just messing with it.
I thought Canadians were really polite.
How you guys doing?
Doing great.
Good. Doing good.
Good to be here. Good to be here.
Well, we're glad that you could come on because it's been quite a few years since we last talked. So,
I think when you last talked, you guys were audio only.
We were audio only. Yep, Blog Talk Radio. Man, that was some old stuff there.
We're dating ourselves, that's for sure.
Yeah, we dated. Yeah, we start talking about Yahoo chats and Bigfoot forums, then we you got to watch out.
Yeah.
All right, so I tell everybody, Gary is my researcher. He digs up all the good old stuff, so I'm sure he's got a list of questions for you.
Quite a few.
Go ahead, boys. I'm here for you.
Well, I'd like to introduce our guest tonight, Thomas Steenburg. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Yes, sir, you did.
Thomas served in and I'm going to try to do this again, and I'm sorry. The Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry, 1st Battalion, Calgary, Alberta.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, I know the feeling. My service was quite a while ago, too. You're the author of several books, and you've been a researcher for 40 years.
Since 1978, so I guess that'd be like 44, 43 now.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. The first thing I want to talk about is in 1997, you were on News World, Alberta, CBC, and you stated that you would take a Sasquatch to prove the existence. What's your thoughts on kill? Would you still kill one to prove its existence?
I hate the idea of killing one now, but I also admit that's what has to happen. Because the scientific community has always been unanimous in this when asked what do you need to take the Sasquatch out of the realm of cryptozoology and put it in the realm of everyday zoology, and they're unanimous. They need a body or piece of the body or sufficient skeletal remains, and they're not joking around when they say this. I mean, finding skeletal remains would do it. And of course, if they're so low in population that taking one could terminate the species, well, let's face it, they're doomed anyway. It's going to happen sooner or later. I mean, logically, science gets what science has always demanded, and no amount of politically correct wishful thinking is ever going to change it. That's just the way it works.
Yeah.
Oh, but in case you're wondering, I'm strictly in the zoological camp on this. I don't go into the paranormal or anything.
Well, he just wiped out your question again.
I'm still going to ask anyway. You've worked with a lot of the old researchers, Renee DeHenden, Tom Green. The list goes on and on and on. And I know they always didn't agree. They all had different theories. They all had different thoughts. But you managed to work, and from what I've read, really good with all of them.
One of my achievements, I like to say, you've probably heard me say this before. One of my achievements was I was able to be friends and do work with all these guys and not get sucked into their personal wars.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, you couldn't get these guys in the same room together.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
Yep.
You know, Rennie would come. So what did that Chapman think about this or that? You know, something like that. You know. I go, okay.
You got his voice down pretty good.
Yeah,
a lot of
really.
practice. And boy, did he hate it when I impersonated him.
See, he
Yeah.
was originally, was he from Sweden and transferred or lived Switzerland and lived in Canada?
Yeah, he immigrated to Canada in the early 1950s. Was working at a dairy farm outside of Calgary, Alberta, the same area I got started 20 years later. And one day he was just sitting in the kitchen with his employer at the dairy farm, and there was a show on the CBC radio talking about this expedition going to the Himalayas to look for the Yeti, or the abominable snowman, as it was commonly called. And Rennie just casually said, "Boy, wouldn't it be something to go along on something like this?" And I think his boss said something along the lines of, "You don't need to go all the way over there. They got big hairy buggers like that over in British Columbia." That's how he got started. That's how he got started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Thomas, I want to ask you, how did you get started in Bigfoot?
Well, when I was a real little lad back in the early mid-'60s, one morning my mother threw down on the table in front of me and my sister, who's 2 years younger than I am, a hardcover Reader's Digest book for, education purpose, because this book had chapters on everything you can think of, volcanoes, hurricanes, blah, 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 blah. And it had this large section on the period of the dinosaurs. And in the middle of that dinosaur section, there was a little 2-page article with the usual 3 blurry black and white photographs called The Thing in Loch Ness. I don't know. I must have read that damn thing 80 times. And pestering my parents for more information, they finally handed me a library card because, believe it or not, to most of your listeners out there was a time where we actually had to learn things by reading books. and they said, "Go to it, kid." And I went there, and I knew at a very young age I was never going to move to Scotland. So I started reading about this thing, looking for more things on the Loch Ness Monster, this thing in Western Canada called the Sasquatch. British and United States, they called it Bigfoot, and that just sort of took its toll in my young impressionable mind. And then not too long after that, I came downstairs and it was a school night. My parents were in the living room watching a movie on the old black and white TV. I think my father, as I recall, when I popped around the corner, and I'm thinking I'm going to go, "Hey, what are you doing up now, boy?" It's going. I get back up there, the usual. I got, "Hey, the lad's interested in this kind of thing. Maybe we should let him watch this." And my mother said something along the line, "Oh, no, you can't watch this. He'll have nightmares, blah, blah, blah." But my father won that argument, and I'm sure he regretted that. And what was playing on the television was that Hammer horror film, the Abominable Snowman in the Himalayas, starring Peter Cushing. Do you remember that old one?
Mm-hmm.
It was Sasquatch from that day on, and that's what I thought about constantly. Couldn't get it out of my head, Couldn't get it out of my head.
Nope.
Yeah.
I think I have watched every cheesy B movie on Bigfoot that has ever been made.
Boy, and there ever a lot of them.
Yeah. Some of them are not as not as bad as others, and some of them that's time I'm never going to get back.
Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to talk about here was, have you had a sighting yet?
In all the years I've looked, I may have had a fleeting glimpse once. Only once. And it was in 2004 on the west side of Harrison Lake. And remember, I have a favorite favorite saying: stick to the facts, never deviate from the facts. And I was taking a fellow named John Miles, who's the watchman up there at the 20 Mile Bay camp. I was taking him home. And just as we were coming around, and we got a nice overlook towards Big Bald Head Mountain before you get to the entrance to the road that goes off towards Mystery Valley, I saw a figure cross from the cut line where the large power lines went through, from the center of that cut line and disappear in the trees on the right-hand side. There was barely enough time to bring my old Land Rover to a halt and jump out, because at the time I jumped out and I had the camera sitting right there, and get the camera up. It was gone. All I could do was look at John and said, "You see that?" He said, "Yes, I did." And remember, stick to the facts, never deviate the facts. What I saw at that distance was a large, jet black, upright walking figure, but was too far away to see detail. So I can't say with 100% certainty that wasn't a big, strange looking man way up there. If that was a Sasquatch, I have actually seen one. If that was not, I still have not.
Interesting. Good. The next subject I wanted to bring up is, it's a weird question. I ask all of my people weird questions. The question is animal, mineral, or vegetable? And I'll explain it. Animal, do you think Bigfoot is a physical living animal? Mineral, do you believe that Bigfoot might be extraterrestrial or can move through portals between dimensions? Or vegetable, do you think it might be supernatural, or do you think it has properties of all three?
I think we're dealing with a zoological mystery. It is an animal. In my opinion, and I'm only expressing my opinion, the Sasquatch, if it exists, is a primate of some kind. Nothing more, nothing less. It's either that or the whole thing is myth and mythology.
Yeah.
I noticed in the background you have a Gigantopithecus black eye skull in the background. Do you think possibly that might be one of the ancestors or predecessors of Bigfoot?
Well, it's a good hypothesis, but that's all it is a hypothesis.
Yeah.
It fits. But again, we got no evidence that Gigano ever existed on this side of the Bering Land Bridge. Yep. It's just if the Sasquatch is Gigano, well, it obviously was. But to me, until we find fossil evidence that Gigano was actually here, it's still completely a theory.
Yep.
Along with the many other theories. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe China probably holds the most fossil evidence of Gigantopithecus black eye.
Yep.
And
Vietnam as well has found some as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's mostly just part of a lower jaw and teeth.
Teeth and lower jaw. Yeah.
They think porcupines may have eaten the rest of the bones for the calcium in them.
Or who knows? There were a lot of scavengers all through history. Something died out there. It didn't last very long.
Yeah, that's still true today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still true today. The next question I want to get into, and we talked about it a little bit before we come on, is what are your thoughts on the M.K. Davis Bluff Creek massacre?
I thought John Green, Bill Miller, and myself blew that nonsense out of the water when it was first announced way back in 2009. Because the first we heard of this was John Green was getting strange phone calls from the late Bobby Short and people like that saying, "We know the truth, John. You got to come clean, blah, blah, blah." And of course, John Green was taken way aback by this. And through questioning, we figured out that MK came out with this wild radical theory. And it's partly our fault because there was a time when MK was quite well highly esteemed because he did great stabilization work on the PG film. Remember that? And we were putting together notes for I think it was the Bigfoot Film Journal book that came out later on, a year or so later. And we wanted to get his opinion. So we sent him a copy of a John Green, well, not the film itself, but we sent him a lecture copy that John Green had put together, a film that John Green had put together in the 70s, for public speaking purposes, because back then you wanted to talk to the public. You showed floppies, you showed slides, or you showed movies on a projector because we didn't have computers and all this stuff. So he had this lecture copy of that had the PG film footage on it and several bits from other home movies on it. John Green and the lady holding the mass up outside the Victoria Museum. Little snippets from the second roll of film that has completely disappeared. The Parrish and Gilman shot that day was also on it. And none of this had ever been seen on the internet before. As a matter of fact, M.K. Davis, without permission, posted a lot of this on the internet. We didn't go after him for that, but none have been seen before, because a lot what was on it. One of these films was Rennie, the late Rennie DeHinden's Blue Creek Mountain footage from the investigation earlier that same year in the Blue Creek Mountain region and all the tracks. What I think happened is MK was looking at this, and he thought he was looking at never before seen portions of the PG film, not knowing any better. And he started putting out stills from the film, and we could tell by what he was doing that he completely changed the contrast to make the water in the creek look blood red. He made the hands on the pilot, the man beneath the Keith Kazaris, look blood red. And at that time, they were all thinking that was Bob Titmus there, when we knew it wasn't. Right? It was Keith Kazara. He was the pilot who actually flew them down there out of Chilliwack. I don't care what your reasons are. When you alter stills to give them false impression of what people are looking at, that's hoaxing by any definition I know. So as far as I was concerned, we caught MK hoaxing to try and pass this ridiculous massacre theory off. And ever since then, and of course, we wrote this article, The Massacre of Bluff Creek by Bill Miller and Thomas Steenburg. And we exposed everything about this that we knew. And we thought we had put it to rest, but it still comes up every now and then because people just don't want to let it go. You know, and as far as I can tell, MK's been on damage control ever since.
Yeah.
I've even seen video of him on YouTube down at the PG film site after the massacre theory came out. And he's talking about the whole thing like it never happened. So I don't get it. I really don't get it. You know, and, you know, and of course, a guy named Pilates, David Pilates, you know, missing 411 got involved in this. And he was writing letters and saying, gee, John, we never accused you of hiding a deep, dark secret, unknowing that we were good friends of the late Al Hodgson. Everything they said to him, we heard about. So I said, what about these emails to Al Hodgson? John Green's hiding a deep, dark secret. Just crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. And the late Bobby Short, a woman who I got along with very well, and this sort of ended. She got mad at me for this because she was right in this massacre camp. She insisted that the man in that Blue Creek Mountain footage was Bob Titmus, and no matter what we showed her the logbook, the flight logbook, the photographs of the guy standing beside the actual plane, blah, 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 blah. And said, no, his name is Keith Kazara. He's actually still alive. He lives in Alberta. But they just didn't want to hear it.
Yeah.
My unnamed source says this is Bob Titmus. Well, her unnamed source was probably David Pilates and MK David. So, as far as the massacre of Bluff Creek theory is a tinfoil hat conspiracy theory that is just absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
Excellent answer.
Yep.
Excellent answer. I know over the years, Thomas, you have received probably hundreds, if not thousands, of Sasquatch reports. What is the most compelling sighting report that you've ever taken?
Well, I have a few favorites.
Let's hear it.
One would have to be the Crandall Campground incident of the May long weekend 1988 in southwestern Alberta. That's where 4 people claim this thing walked through their campsite, and they all panicked and jumped in their cars, were driving around and ran into a truckload of other people who said they saw it too. Do you remember that one? I wrote about it quite extensively in my book. It's known as the Crandall Campground incident in Waterton Lakes National Park. And in the May long, Queen Victoria's birthday is a long weekend holiday here in Canada. And they were down there and site C3 Crandall Campground. Just before midnight, 2 of the people who were in this group decided to take a walk to the public washrooms down the trail in order to brush their teeth before they turned in. And as they were walking down this trail, this thing, which they could only see the outline at from the lone porch light on the bathrooms in behind it. They almost walked into the damn thing, and it sort of grunted at them and stopped. And Susan, being very afraid at night, yelled, "It's a blank, blank, blank bear," or something to that effect. She pulled away from her husband, ran right back to the campsite. But Scott Stone asked, he slowly kept his eye on it. He said he watched it walk off the trail to the left. And of course, the other two people who were back at the camp, as soon as they heard her yell "bear," and saw her running back, it was helter-skelter for the cars. They all ran in the car, bang, 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 door. A couple of minutes later, Scott slowly walks back in camp, tries to get into the car next to his wife, but she locked the doors and she wouldn't let him in. so in the other car, I guess somebody had to be sacrificed. By the way, they're divorced now.
Yeah. Imagine that.
And the other couple, they have since married, and they had a whole platoon of kids. I mean, a lot of years have gone by. And they turned on the headlights of the cars, and this thing walked in the area illuminated by the lights, and they were able to watch it and disappear. And they said, "You know what that was?" And so they went driving around. Well, the two men wanted to drive around to see if they could see it again. And it took them a while to calm Susan down, because she wanted to back up and leave. And she wanted to blare on the horn to wake up everybody else who was in a campsite around. But they calmed her down, and they ran into a pickup truck with 4 other people in it, 2 older people and a kid. And 3 of them claimed they had seen it too. And that's what they were doing. They were driving around trying to see it again. But, I was never able to track down who these people in the other pickup was. So I have to keep in the back of my mind that these people pulled something off and were just hanging around to see if they've been successful. You got to count that possibility. But you never know. It's one of my favorites. Another one's got to be the Bald Bear Creek finding along the Chilliwack River in August 1986, where an American couple who were up here for Expo, because that was Expo year, were fishing, and they claimed this large gorilla-like thing walked through the camp and stole a stringer of fish. I caught them just as they were leaving, and I got a chance to interview them. They were originally from Salt Lake City, and they were going to head off to Alberta and back across the border and head home. And they pointed out where the thing went. And I went looking along Bald Bear Creek, and I found the tracks. They never saw them. And that's the most convincing set of footprints I ever came across, because there was over 100 impressions. The best one by the creek, I cast 2 of them. And they were huge. They were almost 18 inches long. And I think if I had not found them tracks in 1986, I may have, as my late wife or my ex-wife said, put the Sasquatch on the back burner and concentrate on the more important things in life. But after that, there was no way I was ever going to give up on the Sasquatch research, and I never did. And funny, and of course, another good one is in 2000. Jesus, the name date's got I think it was 2010. There were 2 incidents on Archibald here, not too far from here. 2 different sightings by 2 different witnesses on the same Forest Service road, half an hour apart and only about a kilometer apart, and they didn't know about each other. So I think it was a fair bet that both these cases were they're talking about the same animal, but I can't say that with 100% certainty. I mean, there's been a lot of them that have been very impressive to me. Yeah.
Excellent. I know in the U.S. military, a lot of the bases have Sasquatch sightings and Sasquatch reports, and it's all kept pretty quiet. Being in the Canadian Armed Forces, is it a similar situation there?
Usually, yes. I have not. I've heard of very little involving D&D, Department of National Defense. Matter of fact, I can't think of one incident of a sighting on a military training area or a base in Canada. Not one. There have been sightings by military personnel going about their own business and stuff like that, but not on a base where suddenly the colonel has to say, no, that didn't happen. No. No, I'm not. I haven't looked into a single incident like that. Matter of fact, when I was in, all the guys, I'm the one that wanted to go out looking for Sasquatch. All the other guys, when we had a rare day off, wanted to go down to the bars and chase some girls. I was the weird one because I was out looking for great big hairy covered girls.
We got a question from one of our chat room people here. Mick says, did you ever see the version of the Patterson-Gimlin film that DeHenden got a hold of? If so, how close were you able to see it? Green believed it was a first-gen master copy.
Well, John Green and Rennie DeHenden both had a first-generation copy from the camera original. Both the Green copy and the DeHenden copy were first-generation copies from the camera original. Okay? Now, there was a rumor that Rennie DeHenden and another man were able to get the camera original from the so-called lawyer's office in Miami, Florida, that had the real thing for the longest time after American International closed their doors and went out of business, right? I mean, there's a lot of rumors about what happened to the camera original. We really don't know. There was even a rumor a few years ago that some guy found what was left of it in a garage somewhere. Can't remember. But I do know that the Green copy and the DeHenden copy were first-generation copies made from the camera original. And they were both produced, as well as the original film, at the Ford Motion Picture Lab in Seattle, Washington. And the reason I know that is the late Bill Miller went in there in the year 2000 to get 8mm Kodachrome 2 film because he had a big interest in the Kennedy assassination. He wanted to do comparisons down in Daly Plaza with the Zapruder film. And somehow the subject of Bigfoot came out, and the old guy worked on, oh, yeah, we developed that here. We showed it right there on the wall. They go, oh, really? Tell me about it. So he did. He's the first guy to come in was a businessman. He gave us, a lot of people said, how were they able to develop so fast? People forget in the 60s, rich people were able to pass money under the table to a lot of places to get other kinds of movies produced, for parties and things. And he gave them some money and they produced it for him. And he was able to get it done and back for his first showing at his house a couple of days later at Al DeAtley's home. So the businessman was obviously Al DeAtley. And he said a few weeks later, a little cowboy showed up to have a couple of copies made, Roger Patterson. And John Green had copies made from the camera original too, one of which he gave to Rennie DeHenden. Yeah. Nice. Of course, Rennie through the years managed to befriend Bob Gilman to the point where he convinced Bob Gilman to go after Mrs. Patterson after Roger died to get certain rights to certain stills from the film. And that's how Rennie ended up getting certain rights to certain stills of the film. And if anyone ever tried to publish these stills in their books, Rennie went after you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's how all that came about. Yeah. Yeah. But, Roger, Cine Kodak K100. This is what Roger used.
Yep.
Shot
the camera.
Yep. For the longest time, I thought, because this was picked up for me in the Yakima area, there was a long shot. Maybe this is the actual camera, but it's not, because this camera the serial number is 3548, and the actual camera Roger used, the serial number is 3641. So mine's actually older than his.
Nice. Nice.
Still pretty close.
So here's the thing, Gary. So Thomas threw a loop for me when I asked him about his favorite style of music, right? I'd never been told this, right? So Thomas goes, classical. I said, I ain't never tried making an AI created classical song. So I did it. I was able to get AI to create Thomas Steenburg's theme song as a classical. And again, now this is AI's version of classical. If it's wrong, Thomas, don't kill me. But here's the AI version, and the name of the song is The Saga of Thomas Steenburg.
Oh, good Lord.
back through the endless pines, searching shadows in the moonlit lines. Whispers of legends wild and grand through the mists of British Columbia's land. Footprints linger on the forest floor, echoes call from a distant lore. Eyes like embers in the twilight's glow, lonely wanderer in the world below. Oh, Thomas Steenburg, brave and bold, chasing myths while the night is cold. Through the mountains and the valleys wide, in pursuit of Sasquatch, he won't hide. Streams are talking in the silent night, guiding paths by the pale starlight. Cryptic signs in the ancient wood, mysteries deep and misunderstood. Every rustle, every creaking bough sings the secrets of the here and now. Thomas following each fleeting clue with a heart so fierce and true. Oh, Thomas Steenburg, brave and bold, chasing myths while the night is cold. Through the mountains and the valleys wide, in pursuit of Sasquatch, he won't hide.
That was like an epic classical song right there. It's just
That's-
epic. It's that, I was expecting to see. I was wanting to see Thomas Steenburg coming out with a full body of armor.
Oh no! I was thinking like a leather kilt with a sword in one hand and an axe in the other.
I think more accurate line would have been Thomas Steenburg, he still looks, hasn't found a damn thing. Oh my God.
Oh man!
Thank you. How did you do that?
It's called AI. It's artificial intelligence. You basically that artificial intelligence has that ability. It'll actually skim Google and all the search engine and just collect information about you, and it'll put it into a song. So it knew that you're in British Columbia. It knew, some information about you, and it just puts it all together in whatever style of music I tell it to.
Oh man, AI is, for us in serious research in this subject, is going to cause us problems.
I agree, because there's a lot of stories about some of the things people have been told by AI.
Yeah.
So yeah, and they start putting that into robotics. Yeah, we could be in trouble.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. I work with a group of guys here called the Sasquatch crew. Used to be called the Bookwash crew, but Jerry changed it recently to Sasquatch crew. And we've been talking a lot about this AI and the effect it's going to have on us. And I'm just not looking forward to it. Simple as that. Yeah.
That's pretty interesting. You mentioned buckwasp, which is the small, hairy hominids.
Right. A lot of it's one of the First Nation names up and down the West Coast for the Sasquatch, Sunaquah, Bookwas, all kinds of things. Some of the legends say Sunaquah is the female, the Bookwas is the male. At least according to the Klaklakewak First Nation people on the islands between British Columbia and the Vancouver Island. Spent a bunch of time up there. I spent about a week up there on Operation Sea Monkey with your guest last time.
Yes, sir. Todd
Neese and
Thomas
Steenburg, who knows that area like the back of his hand. And we found a lot of evidence of everything except what we were looking for.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
And this is going to sound odd being from Virginia, but my wife's dad worked at a coal prep plant, and he had a sighting of a buckwasp near the coal plant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In Virginia?
Yes, sir.
And they use that name?
No. I think the Cherokee might have called them the little people.
Okay.
But he described it as 3 or 4 feet tall, covered in hair. It may have been a juvenile.
Because I do believe the Bookwash, that particular name comes from the Klaklakewak First Nation people on the West.
Yeah, I believe it does. But I thought that was odd. You know, my father-in-law had a sighting in Virginia of something that they have named in Canada.
You know what? I'm not surprised because, around up until about 1995, I was in the same camp as the late Peter Byrne. I thought the Sasquatch was a West Coast mystery, east side of the Rocky Mountains west. I really had a hard time with reports from the east because my mental image of New York State and stuff was like Europe, woods is a small patch of trees between towns and civilization. I've since learned firsthand that the towns are little dots in vast areas of wilderness. So the idea of the Sasquatch existing in the eastern part of the continent, I've completely turned around on that. Yeah. And of course we had the folk monster from Arkansas, the skunk ape from Florida, and things like that being reported over the years. Texas had a whole batch of them back in the day, and they still do. I mean, the possibility of the Sasquatch existing elsewhere, I think is possible, which is why the fact that we haven't found it yet still astounds me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that was actually going to be one of the questions that I asked was, up until the 90s, you thought they didn't exist on the East Coast. But with that being said, do you think there's any differences in the Sasquatches in Canada and the Sasquatches maybe in the southern U.S.?
Well, not in reality, but in the public's perception. Yes. You ever look at statues and drawings of Bigfoot in the United States? He's always ripped, like Schwarzenegger in his prime, covered in hair,
Mm-hmm.
Descriptions in Canada, it's more like Schwarzenegger covered in hair as he looks today. Big, but not ripped.
Mm-hmm.
That was one great big difference. Yeah. But it's the attitude of the people more than anything else. I mean, in the Pacific Northwest of the United States, Bigfoot's everywhere. You can get your Bigfoot burgers at the Bigfoot Bar and Grill in the Bigfoot center of this particular town. Whereas in Canada, Sasquatch, there's only one town in all of British Columbia that's even similar to that, and that's Harrison Hot Springs. Every place else, you would never know that the legend's here. In the United States, there's going to be a documentary on Bigfoot. People say, that's interesting. I'll watch that. In Canada, it was more like, ooh, a documentary on the Sasquatch. That's interesting. But the hockey game's on. I'm watching that.
That's right.
So it was a big. Canadians were a more laid back lot. I mean, here we had conferences on this subject in the heart of Vancouver, and we could barely get 80 people to attend and buy tickets.
Yeah.
Whereas Don Keating in Ohio, they had to move it to a bigger auditorium because there was not enough room for everybody because so many people wanted to attend. That's the real difference in the attitude of the public, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It always was, yeah.
Another question I wanted to ask you. You worked, like I said, with a lot of the old school researchers, and most of those are gone.
Mm-hmm.
If you could bring back one researcher that you worked with from the old school that's passed on, who would it be and why?
Oh. Well, it would be a toss-up between Vladimir Markotic and John Green. Vladimir Markotic, because when I started, he basically took me under his wing, and he did the academic stuff, and I did the field work. We sort of became unofficial partners. It was through Vladimir that I eventually met John Green, the late Peter Byrne, the late Grover Krantz. I met them basically through Vladimir, though Rennie, I met on my own. And John Green, while he was an incredible accumulator of data, I mean, before the internet, he was the major source to go to for information on this subject because he was the one that kept the records. Rennie would say, "Oh, you need a dump truck to keep all the crap he thinks is happening." But it was the same thing. And John would say, "Rennie's got strong opinions." But yeah, I guess it'd be a toss-up between those two. But really, I'd like to bring them all back because I miss them all a great deal.
Yeah.
I mean, there was nothing more interesting in the late 70s, early 80s when all these guys were around trying to do work with them all without getting them mad at me. That wasn't easy, but it happened.
Yeah. Yeah,
first thing. So, and John Green couldn't stand Peter Byrne. You always say
the big game hunter. The big game hunter.
If you do anything with Peter Byrne, you'll never do anything with me. And then I go, in 2010, I finally met Peter Byrne face to face down in Oregon at the Beachfoot gathering. And I came back, and I hadn't even said hello, and John goes, "So I hear you had a nice chat with Peter Byrne." How the hell did you know? It's like the CIA or the KGB. Everybody knows what everyone's doing before it ever happens. But he didn't hold it against me. He just wanted to ask me his opinion on things, so I wouldn't tell him.
Thomas, I know you started your research when you were pretty young. You were in your 20s. And like I said, you've been doing it, 43, 44 years now. Has research changed since you started? And if it has it changed for the better or the worse?
No, it stayed the same. We're still spinning our wheels. Nothing has changed at all, at least in my opinion. Okay. What has changed is the growth of what I call inmates running the asylum. What you used to call the lunatic fringe is now, they're the majority now. And that's the problem. Mm-hmm. The internet, great tools it is in a lot of ways been the worst thing that ever happened to this research, because it's a soapbox for every snake oil salesman out there. There are a lot of good researchers, but there are a lot more bad ones. People who, let's face it, they're really not interested in solving the mystery of the Sasquatch. They like it the way it is. They like that endless merry-go-round. They like going through life and pretending to be Mulder and Scully on occasion to make their blog pages pay off or whatever they're doing. They don't care if it exists. They just care about clicks. That to me, is the biggest problem with this research, because there are so few good researchers. A researcher is somebody, and again, this is only just my opinion, it's a person who has to be willing to admit that in the end, they could turn out to be wrong. You know, I fully accept the possibility, even though I don't personally believe it yet, that the Sasquatch could turn out to be nothing more than myth and mythology. I don't personally believe that, but I accept the possibility. Other people who don't, they're not researchers. They're more like religious fanatics pushing a faith. You know, they're like a priest on a pulpit. And that's, in my opinion, that's completely the wrong way to go about it.
Excellent. I know as researchers, we're all getting a little older. I have a birthday coming up here this week, and
happy birthday.
Appreciate it. Do you think that Sasquatch will be proven in your lifetime?
If it exists, yes. If it doesn't exist, no.
Do you think anything exciting will happen in the future?
I think the next 5 years will be vital. And again, I'm only expressing my opinion. The next 5 years will be vital. Almost 20 years ago, when they built the Coquihalla Highway in 1986, I had an idea. I called it the Coquihalla Project. A Coquihalla Highway is a great big highway that runs from Hope to Kamloops in the north. And they got wildlife fences along both sides of it. And they built wildlife tunnels under the highway. I had an idea of if we could put solar-powered trip cameras to cover all those wildlife tunnels and all the tunnels that for a river or a creek, anything big enough for a man to get through. And we ran it for, I don't know, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, however long it took to get video evidence of every large animal we know is there. If that happened and we don't get footage of a Sasquatch, that would at least convince me that the Sasquatch is probably myth and folklore. You know, the Trans-Canada Highway did the same thing through Banff National Park. You guys know where Banff National Park is on the east side of the Rocky Mountains?
I don't think so. I do.
On the Alberta and British Columbia border. They had what was called in the early 90s a red flag program. They put little red flags along the highway for every place an animal got hit by a car, killed. And there are thousands of these things, everything from a squirrel to a grizzly bear, right? So they finally gave up on that because the public just wouldn't slow down. They built wildlife fences and they built tunnels so the wildlife could get across the highway. Then they built overpasses with trees on them there. And unlike the Coquihalla Highway, these overpasses and the tunnels did have cameras, but they weren't 24/7, 365 days a year. They put them out a week here, then they move them a week there or somewhere else, you know. And in all that time, since the mid-1990s, they have footage and photographs of everything you can think of, except guess what? Yeah. And they even got some pictures of some pretty strange-looking people. So I don't know. But the out is the cameras aren't 24/7, 365 days a year. Now, the reason the next 5 years are important is the I-5 highway in Washington and Oregon states that run all the way from the Canadian border down to Northern California. A long history of sightings in Washington and Oregon on both sides of the I-5, even reports of them crossing the I-5 late at night, things like that. It's hundreds of times. Always amazing me one never got killed because everything else has. Yeah. Well, north of Vancouver on the I-5, they have built wildlife tunnels for the first time, just solely for the purpose of wildlife getting across the highway without risking getting hit. And tunnels is really a bad term for these ones because they're about the size of a football field.
Wow.
Unlike the ones in Canada, these are covered by cameras 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. I even heard, even though I haven't found it yet on the internet, that we're going to be able to watch through these cameras on the internet eventually. Now, in the next 5 years, if we get video evidence and photographic evidence of everything we know is there, they even got I heard they even got a photograph of a grizzly bear that they didn't think was that far south of Washington State yet. So, you know, if they get everything and they don't get a Sasquatch, you really got to ask yourself why.
Yeah.
Why? Yeah. You know, if you're zoological, you got to ask yourself why. I mean, I know the paranormal people go on an English merry-go-round with their excuses of outer dimension, blah, 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 blah. But that's it. The next 5 years is going to be fun. The only problem is these cameras are not kept secret like they were in Canada, so everyone's going to know about them. I know it's only a matter of time before some clown in a ghillie suit will play a game, or someone who with skill with AI will try to fake something in one of them. But that's the drawback. But to me, the next 5 years between now and 2030 are going to be vital, at least in my personal opinion, on the existence of the Sasquatch.
Yeah. Excellent. That's pretty
nice
interesting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Pretty interesting.
It's a zoological animal, and they're there, and they should be, because that's the heart of their territory in Washington State and Oregon State. They should be picked up, at least on occasion.
Mm-hmm.
They should be picked up. Everything else it will be, they should be too. If they're not, there's got to be a reason for it. And the obvious reason for it is they're not there to be picked up.
Right.
I know Mick in a comment mentioned that he saw a lot of bears on Canadian military bases. Do you think that possibly people might be misidentifying Sasquatch as a bear?
Well, there's been a few accounts the other way around where people have mistaken bears for Sasquatch when they see one moving a few steps upright and things like that. But I know a lot of cases where people have been looking at one thinking it is a bear walking upright, but it just doesn't go back down on all fours and it keeps going. Like, to me, that can't explain the thing I saw in 2004 as a bear, because it walked that whole cut line on its back legs, and bears won't do that normally. Yeah.
Really interesting. Thomas Fisk just asked if I can get my computer to act right here. Has Thomas ever been on Vancouver Island?
Oh yeah, many times. I don't go as much anymore because it's like $100 one way on the ferry nowadays. But yes, wow. I've been to Vancouver Island and investigated reports of Vancouver Island many times. Built a number of documentaries over there over the years. Yeah, I've been on Vancouver Island many times. There's no doubt in my mind, if the Sasquatch exists, it exists on Vancouver Island, especially around the Defino area. Yeah. It has to, yeah.
I've done a little study, and I got a lot of interests in cryptids, not just Sasquatch, but some other stuff. But the Ibn Gogo in Indonesia, which they think might be the fossil remnants, the Hobbit that they found, and working with that, and I can't remember the name of it because I'm just pure simple country boy. But things that are big on islands usually get small, and things that are small get big.
Mm-hmm.
You think that might affect Sasquatch on these islands like Vancouver Island and some of these other ones?
Well, I think in the north, there's also a belief that the further north you go, the bigger things get. So it's no surprising that in Canada and areas up northern British Columbia, the Yukon and stuff, we get a lot of reports of Sasquatch 10 feet tall, 12 feet tall, that kind of thing. And it's no surprising that the one higher primate, see, every primate on Earth in our northern mountain country has to deal with cold weather. We do it because we're smart, or at least we think we are. We invent things, clothing, housing, things like that to keep us from freezing to death. Without those attributes, the only other solution our species would have would be to grow very large and a body covering of hair. So it's absolutely logical. The one higher primate other than humans that seem to exist in North American wilderness areas, no matter, seems to be a very large one. If people were reporting something the size of a spider monkey over there, there'd be something generically wrong and evolutionary wrong. Right. So, yeah, it's not surprising that the reports of the Sasquatch seems to be of a rather large, bulky creature. Yeah. It has to be in order to survive.
Yeah.
I don't think they hibernate because even though sightings go down in the winter months, they don't disappear completely.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't get reports of thin Sasquatch in the spring with obese Sasquatch when in the late fall, like bears, because they spend all their summer months eating, putting on the layers they need to get through the next hibernation through the winter. As a matter of fact, here on the West Coast, some bears don't go down at all because it doesn't get that cold. But the Sasquatch, that seems to be around all the time. The reason why I think there are fewer sightings in the winter time because there's fewer people out there, and the ones that are out there are making a lot of racket.
Yeah.
Skidoos, whatever, you know. That kind of thing.
Yeah. Do you think that Bigfoot might migrate, or do you think that they have pretty much like a home range that they work depending on what food sources are available?
I don't think they migrate. I think they basically stay in the same general area. Well, okay, now this is all hypothesis on my part, okay? I can't back this up, but this is just my opinion. And this is, of course, assuming it does exist. I think the Sasquatch has family groups. The dominant male, maybe 1, 2, maybe 3 females and young, okay? I think he tolerates the daughters, but when the male offspring get to a certain size, he dries them off. And they go out on their own, leading a nomadic lifestyle, moving from place to place, getting bigger, getting stronger, getting bigger, getting stronger. And that's what a lot of people are encountering most of the time. You get little towns here like DeRoche or Dudney in the lower mainland of British Columbia, where they're for years will go by without a report. Then all of a sudden, for about a week, there's a dozen reports. And then they stop almost as suddenly as they had started. The one that come onto the area, hung around for a while, and then moved on. And he goes on his nomadic lifestyle, getting bigger, getting stronger. And maybe when he's in his prime, he'll come across a family group with an aging male, and he'll challenge the dominant male in that group and either kill him or drive him off and take over. And that's just the cycle. And a lot of these older, sicker ones may be dethroned males that go back to that nomadic lifestyle till they die, if they were lucky enough not to get killed by the challenger that took over. You know, that's sort of like the same scenario that you get in mountain gorillas and orangutans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that to me makes the most sense. That's what I think what we're dealing with, assuming it does exist.
Yeah.
Excellent. Billy, that's all I got, pal.
Well, you took it right on up to the 10 o'clock hour, so you did good. Good job, Gary.
That was fast.
That hour goes by fast.
Yeah, boy.
Well, Thomas, he could talk for the next year and never talk about the same thing.
I could probably sit there and listen, too, for real. That's the bad part.
Thomas, we really appreciate it, man. It's just an honor to have you come back on the show.
Oh, anytime.
And,
just give me a call anytime you want to talk some more.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we'll take you up on that offer.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, if you have any guest suggestions for us, just let us know, because we're always open for suggestions. So,
You want some right now?
Sure.
Hit it.
All right. I recommend Jerry Matthews, the Bookwash Crew, Bill Reed, Daniel Perez, Richard. Oh, I'm getting older. Alzheimer's names are popping out of my head.
Yeah, I'd already thought about getting Danny.
There's a lot of great guests you can have, like serious zoological guests.
Yeah.
Larry Lund is still alive in Vancouver. He'd be an interesting guest.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I
was going to say Todd Neesby. You had him last week.
Yep.
Oh, Todd's ex.
Okay.
Diane Stocking. She would be a great guest. Yeah.
I actually had her. Let's see. We had her. Yeah, we did have her.
Yeah.
You know, and
Rick Knoll.
Yeah. I haven't had him in a while. I had him way back.
Yeah. Of course, Professor Meldrum would be a great guest.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate the suggestions.
Yeah. Julie Wrench from on the Shoulders of Giants on the East Coast, close to your territory, North Carolina.
Yeah.
She'd be a good guest. Yeah. There's quite a few of them now. But as I'm getting older, I'm realizing I can't remember names like I used to be able to. I used to rattle them off like you wouldn't believe, and now every now and then I get these blank spots.
Oh yeah, they come quite often the older we get.
Yeah.
I can give you a Southern term for that, Thomas.
What's that?
It's called worrying about the hereafter. As I get older, I worry about the hereafter because every time I go into a room, I have to stop and think, now what am I hereafter?
Oh.
A lot of truth to that.
Yep.
Amen.
Well, again, we thank you, Thomas, for being on the show, and hope you enjoyed yourself.
I did. I enjoyed it thoroughly, boys. Anytime.
Good deal. And are you able to hold on while we close everything out, and then we'll come back?
Sure.
Okay. All right. I want to thank everybody. We had quite a few guests on here tonight watching, the visitors, and we had some new folks come into the chat. I appreciate that. Anyone that didn't come in the chat, just so you guys know, if you get onto the YouTube page, you can actually see the chat and participate. So we encourage everybody to do that. And then, of course, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and that way you'll keep up with who our guests are. So we hope you enjoyed it. We will see you next Monday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. Everybody have a great rest of the week. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.